And welcome back to Pokemon Team Videos. Today's Pokemon Team video comes to us from, I want to make sure I get this right, I believe it is FNAF, which I can't remember what that actually stands for. I know I've seen that before. FNAF Fanboy64. And you asked a very unique Pokemon Team video. What is Jason Voorhees' Pokemon team? By the way, I kind of like the image I found here for the background. Whenever I go online to find the image to put here for like the main one, I always gotta look for those images that when you look at them, you don't see that checkered background, but then you click on it and there's a checkered background, so it's very easy to just put it right there. It just shows up right there with no problem whatsoever. There's no extra background or whatever. But the one I found here is like, he's kind of all ghosty. Like, I like it. It's like, woo, I am Ghost Jason, woo. Anyway, I digress. I'm being a fool. But yeah, Jason Voorhees, like, this one is very weird. Because you don't think of, like, horror icons in that sense. But, I imagine that if Jason were, like, a couple decades in the future, like around the 90s growing up, his mother probably would have been, had him being okay playing Pokemon. So, what would Jason Voorhees' Pokemon team have been? So, let's get into this. Well, first and foremost, I think there's one that we just, I know it's always kind of a cop-out, especially when these guys use blades. But I think a Hone Edge is pretty perfect. It's a sword. It's the closest thing we could have to a machete. And Jason doesn't use just machetes. Jason can use just about anything, but he's predominantly known for using a machete. And B, it's a ghost type. And Jason, as the series progressed, granted, we go into other, alterations, the reboot, Jason X, all that. He's less of a zombie, more of just someone who just can't seem to die. He's often described as more like a force of nature. But because of Jason's more undead natures, as we got later into the series, ghost type makes perfect sense. So Hone Edge, I think that's a given. After that, though, we get into a bit more of we got to go a bit more into the facets of Jason himself. What are some of the facets of Jason? Well, one of the big things I think about is his relation to his mother. I think that's one of the big things a lot of people think about because, he does a lot of what he does for his mom. And in the original one, it was his mom who was the killer, obviously. So, thinking about Pokemon that have that relationship to their mother specifically, one of them that stood out to me was the good old Kong of Kangas, and Kangaskhan. And I think it makes a lot of sense that, this represents the Pamela Voorhees to him, where it's the mother that is obviously protecting the child, avenging the child, and is overall, the one who is the more dangerous of the two in the first movie. However, there is another Pokemon that actually has a very serious and morbid relationship with said mother. Now, I could have gone Cubone here, but I actually chose Marowak, because Marowak is kind of the full realization of where the Cubone, where Cubone goes. Cubone could have represented young Jason, absolutely, wearing the skull of his dead mother. But because of Marowak, and because there's an Alolan variant that is a ghost type, I felt Marowak was the better option because this represents an adult Jason who just evolved and now wears the sins and the awful truth of his mother on his skull. It's now part of him. This can also represent Jason's space mech as well, and the bone can represent the machete. Now, I could have gone the Alolan variant, but the problem is besides Jason going to hell, and that really is just the vital part of the movie where he goes to hell, there's nothing that's really representative of fire when it comes to Jason. So it's one of those things where I really couldn't think of another reason to put Alolan Marowak on there. There is another reason, though, that I chose Alolan or standard Marowak. Alolan Marowak could have fit, too, because it's fire type. And that is because of Jason's weird relationship with water. Now, only in the Freddy vs. Jason movie does he have an actual fear of water. Although, you could make some weird argument about Jason Takes Manhattan, because that ending was weird. But you could make some argument for Jason Takes Manhattan, but only in Freddy vs. Jason does he have a actual fear of water. But Jason's weird in their relationship with water is that water is very associated because he lives at Camp Crystal Lake and is oftentimes buried in Camp Crystal Lake. And whether or not he's afraid of water, the majority of his versions don't seem to be. It seems pretty clear that the thing about Jason is he can't swim. Like, no matter what, he just walks the bottom of the lake usually to get where he needs to go if he's under the water of the lake. Because he's so big and bulky, he doesn't float. And he can't really die. He's been like trapped underwater multiple times. I think it was in the one before Jason Takes Manhattan. Which one was that? Jason Lives? Where he was basically trapped under there by the psychic. It was one of those things where, yeah, he was just chained under there, but he was still alive because at that point he was just a zombie. So I wanted a Pokemon that did represent that as well. And that's where Marowak came in as well, because it's a ground type. It can't handle water. It can't swim. Yes, there was the scene in the original where, yes, you had the Marowak training in the water fountain with that one trainer. But, yeah, let's be honest. That's, Rhydon learned surf, not a one episode, and therefore it's, hey, water techs don't work on him. He's not afraid of water. Okay. So, anyway, yeah, how Rhydon learns surf, who knows? But anyway, moving on. There was also the thing, though, that when it came to Pokemon types, there were two options. There's the Dark type, which is also represented the Evil type. But honestly, I don't think that actually fits Jason, because Jason isn't good. Obviously, he's a murderer, he's a serial killer, all that. But is Jason actually evil? I think that's the thing. In some interpretations, yes. In others, he's just, again, he's a product of his mother and what people did to him. So is he truly evil? So I couldn't really justify really putting a Dark type on the team, weirdly enough. Ghost types, however, fit pretty well, being, the Undead type, if you will. And Jason, pretty much in most incarnations, being undead. So, one of the big ones I chose was Mimikyu here. Mimikyu, obviously, is a little ghost type that honestly just wants to make friends and is jealous of Pikachu, and that's why he wears this little mask and this little suit. Now, Jason, I think, isn't obviously a one-to-one comparison with Mimikyu, but I think there is enough relation there that he hides himself behind his mask. And that ultimately, as a kid, he probably just wanted to make friends, but people just picked on him all the time. I mean, I don't know what would actually happen if someone tried to offer Jason friendship. No one has in the comics, I know there was this incident where a girl was like, "We're the same, Jason, don't you understand? We're the same," and he killed her. But that is the comics, to be fair. The comics are very different than any of the canon, if you will, interpretations. Whether or not you want to argue the comics are canon, that's your own deal. But because you might follow storylines from the movies, but that doesn't make them canon. Let's be fair. Just like the what ifs in like Marvel's What Ifs right now, the series, they follow stories, they follow like points from the stories, but then they deviate. So it's I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, I don't know what would happen if like a kid just offered Jason friendship or something like that. Because the kids seem to be one of the few, kids, like under 12 or under. They seem to be one of the few people who are exempt from Jason's punishment, because Jason and his mom blamed all the counselors, like the horny older teens and 20 and adults and stuff like that, but she never blamed any of the kids, and I think Jason carried that over. So so I think if children offered Jason friendship, I think maybe I'm not saying he could turn a new leaf, but he wouldn't necessarily kill them. I think he'd be more just confused about, aren't you scared of me or something like that? What's going on? However, overall, I think Mimikyu does fit, because also if you gaze underneath there, you're either going to die or become extremely sick. And Jason is not a handsome fella, sadly, so there is that as well. I did also want something that represented the more beefy physical aspects of Jason as well. Now, there are two Pokemon in the remaining 2 slots that represent this aspect of him. Now, one of them, it's just, this one is, I kind of feel, goes in hand where I went with Jason can't swim, big, beefy, muscly, and ghost type, and that's Golurk. I think this just kind of fits the big brute of Jason very well. It's a ghost type, man-made to some degree, and Jason is basically was a product of his mother, so, and other people's doing, so you can make an argument man-made. But I just kind of like this idea of this being on his team. It kind of fits in a few different ways. Again, the ability to not swim because of its ground typing works in combination with Marowak as well, and works with Jason's inability to swim. The fact he's a big, bulky guy, and the fact he's a ghost type, undead. So there you go. But last but not least, we have our final Mon here. And this one I'm like, okay, is there anything else that Jason and I haven't used yet? Jason goes to hell, I can't really use that. I mean, I could use like Houndoom as a Hellhound, but that's not really that in-depth. What about the other versions of Jason's? Like Deadeye Jason? No. Kami Jason? No, there's Pokemon that have good regenerative capabilities, but I don't know. And I'm like, well, there is Jason X. And I'm like, okay, can I get an Uber Jason Pokemon here? And I'm like going through the steel types, because let's be fair, it'd be a steel type. I'm like, well, let's go Agron. Agron is a pretty, there's reasons it's got aggravation and, arrogant or angry in its name. And it's just a big, beefy muscle, muscle of steel and rock. I could have gone Mega Agron, which, honestly, thinking on it, I probably should have gone Mega Agron. Because it is the upgraded form of Agron, and therefore it would be when he becomes Uber Jason. And he is a pure steel type. But either way, I always liked Agron, too. It's kind of like, people who didn't want to wait to get a Tyranitar. Agron was pretty early on in the game. It's not truly a pseudo-legendary, but it is, beefy enough and cool enough to be like, oh yeah, I like this guy. Yeah, I always liked Agron. But yeah, it's it's just a Pokemon that's like, yeah, Uber Jason. And this is a big, meat, beefy monster dude. I mean, I could have gone like or Bisharp with the blades. I could have gone a Scizor. I could have gone plenty of the other steel types that are out there. But I don't know. Something about Agron kind of fit with me a little bit. And I kind of liked. So ultimately, what do we got? Honedge to represent his machete and ghost nature, his undead nature. Mimikyu to represent his mask, the ability, the fact that he does not hurt children, and possibly even wants to befriend them on some minor level, but he just can't. And the fact that he's horrifying underneath his mask. Kangaskhan to represent his mother's love and protection of him. Marowak to represent his mother's influence on him, and the fact that he can't swim. Add on the fact that the bone can represent the machete as well, and that the skull, the helmet that becomes his head, represents his face mask. I think that's pretty apt as well. Golem to represent, again, the non-swimming aspects, undead, and beatstick aspects of Jason. And Agron to represent the beatstick Uber Jason that we get in Jason X. So that, in my humble opinion, is Jason Voorhees' Pokemon team. But what do you ultimately think? Put in the comments below and let me know. Thanks for watching, though. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. As always, you want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. We'll do a review of it at some point. Hit that bell if you want to be notified. Thanks for watching, though. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you folks later, because I still got a who to win. Have a good one.